Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now in today's video, it's pretty much a discussion that I would like to have with you, so I'll tell you up front, I'm pretty much looking for people's comments. And what I want to know is, are you a knife user or a knife collector? Now I came up with the idea for this video when I was going back and forth with one of my viewers. So I'd like to give a quick shout out to my viewer, Dave Zito, who was the inspiration for this video. Basically the way this went was Dave was commenting on one of my videos. This was a Topps Silent Hero video that I put together basically one day while I was looking to have a fire. And so I had the Topps Silent Hero. Now I've had a couple of Silent Heroes in my possession, and this was the second Silent Hero that I've owned, and I had never cut with it before. I totally wanted to use it and figured, what the heck, the best way to go about doing it is through starting a fire. So anyway, Dave commented on that video, and some of the things that I was talking about with that knife is how basically I had some awkward feelings towards it. I didn't really necessarily like the way it felt in my hand. It was a little awkward, and for me it was a knife that I kind of didn't really want to keep. And so Dave was looking into it, saying that he had just started collecting fixed blades, and the Silent Hero was definitely on his list for his collection. And so he thought about what I said about the strange ergonomics and whether or not that would be a blade for him. Ultimately, what my response to him is that basically the way I feel about knives is that you kind of hit some highs and lows. So every knife has its own pros and cons. You're never going to find the blade that's absolutely perfect with no flaws. I mean, every now and then you get close, but I've yet to find a blade that for me hits like 100% of the highlights. And Topps knives in particular for me have a lot of sort of awkwardness to them. Each and every one of the blades has a lot of pros and a lot of cons, but there's always something about it where I just shake my head and I'm like, like why did they do that? And that's really the case with the Silent Hero. Now at the end of it, Dave told me that he admits that one of the most important things to him is the actual cosmetics. And that made me think, you know, you really need to ask yourself, what kind of a blade owner are you? Is this something where you're really a collector or are you a user? And I think that aesthetics goes a long way with products, a long way. That's not only true for all your camping gear, but knives in particular. Man, I mean, a good-looking knife is like, yes. And to me, even though Topps has some funny ergonomic issues, I think they make one of the most beautiful blades. Their finishes, their fit and finish, the way their handles look, the colors and designs, their river wash finish is gorgeous. Everything that Topps does from an aesthetic perspective is excellent. And so my response to him was, well, look, if you're considering this knife, you need to ask yourself, are you a collector or are you a user? Because if you're a collector, I say it doesn't matter what the ergonomics are. I say it doesn't matter how it feels in your hand. If it's a beautiful knife and it fits your collection, by all means, absolutely collect that blade. And believe me, if I wasn't running this channel and had all the money at the end of the world and really wanted to build my collection the way I really see it fit, I would keep all those Silent Heroes, but I've had 2 of them in my possession. I've tried to use them, and I've had to sell them to keep the channel moving. And that's because I am a blade user. I'm not necessarily a collector, even though I would like to be. I'm a blade user, and I'm here to test blades and try blades and mix and match and try them up against other things. And if the blade's not working for me from a user perspective, I'll move on. But for somebody else, maybe the aesthetics is equally important to how it feels in the hand. And maybe when you look at your total collection and how that fits in your collection, it makes perfectly sense to have a blade that maybe doesn't have perfect ergos. And that was ultimately my response to Dave was, if you are basically buying blades to be a collector, by all means, buy a beautiful blade. And for that perspective, hold on to that Silent Hero. Now I'm just going to talk to you about a few examples. So here I have my Becker BK7. Now this to me, whether you're a blade user or a collector, pretty much if you're going to have more than one knife, you're going to get into fixed blades and you're going to have a number of them and you don't care about the size, or maybe whatever, maybe you like a blade in this size. I mean, a BK7 is, in my opinion, something that everybody should own. Whether you're a blade user or a collector, you should have a BK7. I mean, I'll be honest with you, these are kind of like a dime a dozen. There's nothing overly special about a BK7. Certainly not from collectability perspective. From a user perspective, I mean, these are blades that you should just get them and use them and beat them and enjoy them and bring them out to the woods. So for me, something like a BK7 is not necessarily something that gravitates more towards like a collector, but definitely more towards a user. And even if you are a collector, because of the abundance of these and you know, really the different way that you can build them and modify them and make them personalized, it's an excellent option there too. So BK7 could go either way, and for me, definitely a user blade. Now, one of the more recent videos that I put out is on this Doug Ritter BK12. This is the RSK MK2. And so anyway, this could go kind of either direction. Now, this isn't nearly as popular as any of the other Becker line, so it sort of sits in a class of its own. It's not made by K-Bar or Camillus. It was manufactured by Rowan, so it has some like different sort of unique attributes. So I could see this knife actually maybe gravitating a little more towards the collector and not necessarily towards the user. Now, I can tell you, even though at this point I haven't used this blade yet, I absolutely intend on it, and I think as a user and from the user's perspective, I'm going to enjoy this maybe even more so than that BK7. So again, it's something that could kind of go either way. Different blades have different pros and cons whether or not you're going to be a collector or a user. Again, I'm going to lean towards the user perspective every single time because that's how I am, and that's also how I feel about this BK12. Now, very similar to the BK7, the SE6, another blade that just a dime a dozen. You can get them anywhere. You can find them pretty cheap used, or you can buy a brand new one for reasonable money. I do not necessarily think this is a blade that needs to go to the collector side. But what if you're a collector who likes these nice wilderness blades? Maybe you want to have an SE6 and a Rat 7 and a BK7 and all these other blades that are, you know, good quality production knives in this same size range. Well, maybe you want to add the SE6 to your lineup. Or maybe you want all the SEs because you're an SE collector, so you have the 6 and the 5 and the 4 and the 3 and, you know, some of the smaller blades, and maybe you get a Hungerless, and before you know it, you have the whole lineup. I mean, why are you collecting, and what is the purpose of your collection? From the collector's perspective and from the user's perspective, are you buying these because they fit a certain niche and you use them in a certain location at a certain time for a certain reason? So the SE6, again, could go kind of either way, but I definitely see it more as a user blade. Now, this is one that I think is a little bit funny, and it could go either way. Now, this is my Swamp Rat Custom Ratmandu. Now, I can see people buying bussies or swamp rats definitely as collectors, which I think is a shame because they are amazing users' blades. I could definitely see somebody getting a hold of this and putting it in a safe or in their collection and never really using it, but that again is just a pure shame. For me, again, I'm a user, so I have used this blade extensively. It's performed extremely well, and I absolutely love it. But I think people have a hard time getting their hands on something worth a couple $100 and realizing that you're going to go and kind of beat it in the woods. I mean, I'm not saying you're going out there to really destroy the thing, but there's no doubt that these things are made to do work, and you're going to put it through the paces. So can you really justify spending a couple $100 on a blade if you're just going to go and use it on the woods? Well, for me, hell yeah. Why? Because I'm a user. But I also kind of enjoy it in my collection. So, I have a number of blades of different sizes, and I like my blades in my collection to have stains and sap and marks on them and just the patinas, and I'd rather open up my drawer and my blades just have a little unique color to them. Now, I do have to admit that there's a couple of blades that I haven't really used as heavily as I should have. For example, here I have a Spyderco Hossom Forager. Now, I also had the Forester, but I recently sold that to kind of keep the channel moving. And I'll tell you, these are blades that are very hard to get your hands on, and if you're going to get one, you're going to spend a lot of money for it. Basically $300 roughly, in that ballpark. And so for me, I bought these when I was able to get them for a good price, surprisingly low, all things considered. And for me, it's kind of like an investment, and I'm sitting on this thing thinking if the time came and I had to sort of spring to sell this and make a little money to keep the channel moving, I certainly could. But even at that, I have used this blade quite a bit. I should use it more. I do like it. There's some funny things about it, but overall, it's a really cool piece. I used that Forager very lot, and actually, I even featured it in one of my chopping videos. So overall, this is a blade that definitely could go both ways. I'd say it tends to lean more towards the collector, somebody who's buying a blade for its overall value and the collection value and maybe resale value, more so than it would be a user blade. But for me, it kind of splits the difference, and I definitely lean towards this being a collector's piece. Now, very similar to the Spyderco Hossom, here I have two beautiful Ontario Hossom folders. These knives are gorgeous, and actually, if you look at it, are literally the identical same handles to this Forager. So even though this is a Spyderco and this is an Ontario, they have literally the same exact handles. And these are also very hard to get your hands on. You're going to pay a lot of money for this folder. This is a just massive, massive blade. I mean, that is one nice honking piece of metal right there. N690 CO steel. Just beautiful. That handle is gorgeous, micarta, and then like the way it's all sculpted. So again, these knives to me, I can see kind of leaning towards the collector, but I've used them. I've carried them. This has been an EDC for me on a number of occasions. There's marks and digs and scratches on these blades. They're not in perfect condition. So I mean, I'm not holding on to them for any real resale value. I just have them because they are damn cool, hard to get, just beautiful blades, very unique. And so from my perspective, I'd say these lean more towards the collector, but again, I will definitely use them. And finally, just one more blade to talk about. Here I have a steel will Gecko 1505. This is D2 tool steel. This is a beautiful, wonderful blade. Now the main reason why I'm bringing this up, this is a $200+ folder. So are people comfortable EDCing a $200 blade? For me, I've been carrying this every single day, and I absolutely love it. I feel so good about carrying this knife. Such a wonderful blade, and if you've never owned a steel will, which this is my first and only steel will that I've owned, it's just magnificent. I'm very thrilled about this blade. I will be doing a full feature review of this when I get a chance. But again, is this a blade that leans more towards a user or a collector? Would you have a $200 folder that you're willing to carry every day in your pocket and put it to use every single day and ding it up and scratch it up and get gunk all over it and, you know, potentially subject to losing it? I mean, let's be honest, it sits in your pocket and hopefully it doesn't fall out or get lost, but you never know. So is this something that would lean more towards a user or a collector? For me, absolutely, absolutely have to use this knife. So alright guys, there you have it. Real quick discussion about whether or not you're a user or a collector, and I want to hear from you. So what is it? Do you have a bunch of blades sitting in a box or sitting in a toolbox somewhere or even in a safe and you just simply don't want to touch them and that's your collection? Or are you somebody that's taking your blades out and every single one of them you just bring them out there and you thump on it? Or maybe you're somewhere in between. You have a few that you just simply don't want to touch, and a couple of them you say, hey, I'm going to beat on this thing. And you kind of live in both worlds. Again, for me, I'm pretty much, for the most part, just a user. If I had it the way I would want to, I would have a collection, but I'm just not there. So I'm realistic, and you know what? I'm in a position right now where I need to use my blades, and I don't care what it is. I don't care what it costs, whether it's a $50 blade or a $400 blade. It doesn't matter to me. I want to get that thing. I want to feel it in my hands. I have blades that I'm naturally drawn to, and I just can tell from looking at it that it's going to feel good, and I can't wait to go and just cut some wood, process some wood, try and baton, make little feather sticks, carve out some sort of a little brancher or something that I need to ultimately make, like a spear, or I don't know, all sorts of things. I just want to use that knife and enjoy it. So like I said, guys, get back to me. Let me know what you think. I'd love to start this conversation. So alright guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.